Hi guys, Olive here. Here today with the final episode of my What's the Story Wishbone series, in which I have discussed the 1990s era PBS Kids TV show Wishbone. Wishbone was a half-hour television program directed at kids, and every single episode was divided into two different but connected storylines. The first storyline was always an adaptation of a work from within the literary canon. And then in the second storyline, we followed a modern day, meaning 1990s era family living in Texas with their pet Jack Russell Terrier Wishbone, and whatever was going on with them in their storyline always related back to the themes found within that literary adaptation. This series of videos here on my channel has been all about taking on one episode of Wishbone per video and comparing that episode against the work of literature they took on within it, looking at the similarities and differences between them, looking to see if the writers of the adaptation were faithful enough to the work of literature to really capture the essence of it on screen, seeing if they pulled any sort of moral message out of the work of literature to communicate to the young audience, and seeing if the episode was entertaining. But since I have now gone through all of the episodes from the show's 2 seasons, I only have one thing left to do in this bonus episode of What's the Story Wishbone. In this video, I'm going to be discussing the TV movie that premiered in the spring following the conclusion of the series. And as of right now, as of the time I am filming this video, it is the only Wishbone movie out there. Back in 2020, it was announced that a new Wishbone movie was in the works, but I have heard nothing about it since then. So as of right now, this is the only Wishbone movie that exists. And just like the series that preceded it, it also adapts literary works. It takes on 3 short stories from O. Henry's collection, Heart of the West. And the movie itself is called Dog Days of the West. So, one last time, let's take a look. What's the story, Wishbone?
What's the story, Wishbone? What's this you're dreaming of?
At the start of this movie, our characters are enjoying a day at Oakdale's Summer Carnival. Sam and her dad are selling pizza, kids are playing in bouncy houses, and the local glee club is putting on a stellar concert for everyone. Wanda gets stuck watching Wishbone, and as she's searching for Ellen or Joe, trying to get the dog off of her hands, she sees that the wiring for the stage is compromised. She loses hold of Wishbone, and then the two of them together get the kids off the stage before tragedy can strike. The local news station captures this heroic effort on camera, but when they talk to Wanda about it, she gives Wishbone all the credit for realizing what was about to happen and jumping in to stop it. She just followed his lead. But Wishbone isn't interested in being a hero. He's much more inclined to be off his leash, roaming free, which reminds him of the short stories of O. Henry, set in the Wild West. One of the leading characters of this collection of tales is Long Bill Longley, here played by Wishbone, who, with his expertise in moving herds of cattle across the huge state of Texas, eventually graduated from cowboy to bona fide cattleman. His opposite was the gambler Calliope Catesby, prone to bad humors, especially when he's just lost a bunch of money. Long Bill Longley made so much money from his herds that he actually established his own bank. His friend Tom comes to visit him there one afternoon, and the men discuss what's on their minds. Tom is determined to marry the lovely but perpetually single Mame Dugan, while Bill's mind is on an upcoming visit by the bank examiner, who actually turns up ahead of schedule to look over Bill's books. On a walk together, they bump into the Marshal Buck, who tells Bill that he's been keeping a very close eye on that gambler Calliope. All signs are pointing to Calliope getting ready to have another episode, meaning he's about to go on another shooting spree. Back in Texas, everyone gathers at the pizza parlor to see Wanda's segment on the news. They proclaim her as a hero and promise to do a profile on her in the coming days. Even if they do falsely claim that Wishbone is her dog, which we know he definitely isn't, but the Talbots don't mind playing along with that story if it means the adorable little ham Wishbone gets the attention that he craves. He loves it nearly as much as he loves food. But speaking of grub, Bill and Tom are grabbing some lunch at Mame Dugan's place when Calliope walks in. He is obviously in a foul mood, although he is nice enough to Mame Dugan. In fact, in his own Calliope kind of way, he asks her out on a date, but she immediately turns him down, expressing a distaste for all men and their seemingly endless appetites. Tom knows this means that he likely never has a shot with Mame Dugan, and angry about this, he picks a fight with Calliope for really no good reason, which eventually leads to an enormous food fight amongst all the diners, which Mame Dugan has to break up with her shotgun. The men stumble outside directly into the bank examiner, who has finished his evaluation of Bill's books. Everything looks good, except for one thing: a call loan that Bill made to Tom for $10,000. Turns out there was word of cattle at rock bottom prices that could be then resold in Kansas City for double the purchase price. Tom's brother Ed went to see that deal through 3 long weeks ago, and even though they haven't heard from him since, they trust he'll come through. But the problem the bankman has is that Bill made this loan solely on the back of Tom and Ed's good word. He made it with no collateral, and the amount of the loan is more than he's allowed to give to one person. The examiner gives them a little bit of grace, 2 days for the loan to be repaid in full, or else the government has the right to prosecute Bill. Meanwhile, in modern-day Texas, the news is doing its piece on Wanda, the woman behind the heroics. But before she knows it, the interviewer starts asking her all of these personal questions about her ownership of the newspaper, the building it operates in, and also how she owns the old firehouse where the sports store is located. It's becoming less of a profile and more of an expose by the second. They accuse Wanda of wanting to control the development of the town, when it seems like her motives for owning these buildings are much more about the preservation of old buildings. Apparently, this TV reporter has a slimy reputation for twisting the truth to fabricate a story that will get people's attention. The Talbots try to go on record to sing Wanda's praises, turn the narrative around in her favor, but the reporter catches on that Wishbone is actually their dog, not Wanda's. And he uses this as more evidence of Wanda's so-called deceptions. The news then goes on to accuse Wanda of being a town tyrant, trying to own and control the whole town, which no one who knows Wanda believes. She's actually been a great landlord and has loaned people startup money to start their businesses. Wishbone wonders how Wanda could ever be in so much trouble for simply helping out her friends. Tom and Bill know a little something about that too. They still haven't heard from Tom's brother, but if his brother isn't back with the money within a day, then Bill is going to be facing the long arm of the law. Tom feels miserable about this development. He wants to try to find a way to raise the $10,000 himself to get Bill out of trouble. He exhausts all of his moral options of doing so until he becomes desperate enough that he tries to rob a stagecoach. But in the nick of time, Bill stops him from doing something truly out of character. Sam and Joe also decide to take things into their own hands after the news refuses to let go of the Wanda story, going on to accuse her late father of land grabbing as well. They go to the library to research using microfilm, trying to come up with answers about who really owns the newspaper. But back at the newspaper office, the real villain of this story, the owner of the TV station, marches in to tell Wanda and everyone else in the office that Wanda doesn't own the paper. He does now, after buying it from a third party who didn't even realize they had the rights to it. Wanda isn't the only one who's lost control. Calliope has, well, finally just lost it. He's obviously very drunk, he's loaded with tons of ammo, and he begins firing off his guns. Not a good situation. Tom and Bill encourage him to go sleep it off, but he tells them he doesn't think they should be telling him what to do. If fortune had smiled at him the way it did for them in business, he'd be where they are, not the other way around. They can't seem to calm him down, but Marshall Buck shows up, deputizing both Tom and Bill, trying to get their help until they all get the situation under control. What follows is a shootout involving pretty much the entire town, but Wild Calliope cannot be reined in until a train chugs into town containing none other than Calliope's mother, Calliope doesn't want his mother to think the worst of him, so he begs Bill to cover for him. He promises if he does, he will change his ways. So Bill helps trick Calliope's mother into thinking that Calliope is actually the marshal and that Marshal Buck is the wrongdoer, preserving Calliope's mother's upstanding image of her son. We also find out that the bank examiner had rolled in on that exact same train as Calliope's mom, and since he discovers the loan hasn't been repaid, Bill seems to be done for. But as it turns out, Tom's brother Ed arrived that morning with $30,000 in tow from the successful cattle deal. That's enough to pay back the loan and then some. Things seem to be turning around for the 90s characters as well. On the microfilm, Sam found a picture of Wanda's father with their friend Hank's grandfather that would have been taken right around the time of the shift in ownership of the paper. They go to talk to Hank's grandfather about this, and he tells them a story of a poker game that he was at as a child one night. The original owner of the paper lost the paper to Wanda's father during that poker match, and they drew up the deed right then and there. You would expect that such an important document would still be around at the paper, but no one can seem to find it. That is until our hero Wishbone once again saves the day, sniffing it out in the storage area. They have the deed, they have a witness of it being signed in Hank's grandfather who was there that night, and he helps them boot out the imposter. Since they need to spread the word about who truly owns the paper, they need to set the record straight, they all get to work creating a special front page story celebrating the truth of what Wanda owns and who she truly is. So let's talk about the movie, which actually takes 3 stories from Heart of the West and mushes them all together to create one extended tale that then makes up the literary adaptation side of this episode. Of the 3 stories, the most important one from O. Henry's collection is probably A Call Loan. That's the one that we get pretty much in its entirety. That's the one all about that nail-biting loan that Long Bill Longley made to Tom and his brother that gets repaid just in the nick of time. But then the other 2 stories that we focus on are The Reformation of Calliope, which introduces Calliope Catesby as a character and that whole situation with his mother. And then also Cupid a la carte, which shows a man trying to impress Mame Dugan, even though she doesn't like how much men eat. But a difference that I will note between these stories and the adaptation is that the character who's trying to impress Mame Dugan in Cupid a la carte isn't actually Tom. It's a different character entirely. But I do think for the sake of time and just for simplicity's sake, I think it made a lot of sense that they condensed those 2 characters into one. I think they took just enough pieces from all 3 of the short stories to create the world of this small Texas town. I mean, you would not know just by watching this movie that these are 3 completely unrelated, unconnected short stories. The only thing that they have in common is that they're in the same collection. But you wouldn't know that by watching the movie. You feel like they're all connected, like all of these characters know one another. And they really captured the spirit of all 3 of the stories in a way that I find really impressive. There's even dialogue directly from the short stories incorporated into the movie, which I always love. Although I will say, the whole Mame Dugan hates men who eat thing read as just as weird on the screen as it did on the page. Thinking about the ways in which the 2 storylines connected together and thinking about the moral message in this one is where things start to get a little bit convoluted about this movie. The only moral message I was really able to pick up on was this idea that you need to be true to yourself. You need to know your own character even when the world seems to be fighting against you. I think both Wanda and Long Bill Longley came up against a little bit of that in their respective situations. But I feel like they were trying to make the 90s storyline feel like everything was very out of control, like trying to give it a Wild West feel. And then they also had Wishbone keep saying that he desired freedom. Let me off my leash. I want to be free. free, I guess to evoke that feeling of the freedom of the Wild West with the large open spaces. But that's not really what the 3 short stories they were adapting were trying to say. It really didn't have anything to do with them. So I feel like they were reaching a little bit to find connections between the 2 storylines. I also have to mention that the whole does Wanda really own the paper element really came out of left field. I feel like at first the news was accusing her of trying to buy up the whole town and control everything, be some sort of dictator of Oakdale, Texas. But then in the next breath, they said that she didn't actually own the paper. So that was a little bit hard to follow. I will say though, the modern day storyline was very entertaining, even if it wasn't really connected to the literary adaptation, even if it didn't make complete sense. I did really like that suit who played the owner of the news station. He made for a great villain. I loved watching him get bested. Even if I was a little bit confused, how was he able to buy a newspaper from a family who lost ownership of it during a poker game back in the 1930s? If the deed was in the newsroom, how was he able to buy it from them? At a certain point, I just decided to suspend my disbelief and enjoy the Wishbone I had remaining. Even with the problems I had, though, I really did enjoy this movie. It is visually stunning. They put so much work into making that Wild West town feel authentic. I think they filmed on location in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and you can just feel the work they put into it because it is so satisfying watching the literary side of things. I did also enjoy the 90s storyline, not quite as much, and I was really missing the character of David. I don't know why he wasn't included in the movie. I'm assuming the actor who played him just wasn't available to film, but I really missed him. But as a send-off overall for this entire series, as a finishing touch for the series, it was so nice to get one last rodeo with the characters who were in the movie. So now that I have spoken about the movie, that is a wrap for the What's the Story Wishbone series. It is a very bittersweet moment. It has been 5 long years in the making, but I am just so thankful that all of you have gone on this journey with me, this endeavor to deep dive into all the Wishbone episodes. It's been a really rewarding experience, the process of doing it, but then also sharing it with all of my fellow Wishbone lovers. It has been so lovely getting to chat with all of you about the show, about what it means to us, because I know I'm not the only one who cherishes this show. So now that it's done, if you've missed any part of it, if you've come into it late, if you're out in search of one specific episode, or if you just want to start from the very beginning and binge them all, they are all there for you. I will link the playlist containing all of them in the description box below and up in the cards. Let me know down in the comment section below what you thought about this movie, Dog Days of the West, and if you have any hopes for the new movie, if they do end up making it, how do you think they can bring Wishbone into the 21st century? I would love to chat about that with you. Once again, thank you so much for coming along with me on this journey through this watch through. It has been so much fun. I hope you're having a wonderful day, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.